anyway.
You're gonna get a lot of history. You're gonna get a lot of history thrown at you tonight. So be ready.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, good evening, everybody. It's the Big Game Bonanza. My name is Stephen Rabinowitz, and welcome to the On the Sports Line Super Bowl 55 special.
I'm
Along with
Kaplan.
I'm going to introduce you myself.
Well, make up your mind.
I don't
Get
have
to it
to
already.
make up my
We got a
mind.
lot to talk about. Get to it.
Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, the usual gang of idiots like myself, is here once again this week as we preview the big game, as we're almost a year into our Zoom stuff. So this shows how far we've come. And here to join us yet again. See, we all took a week off from any action, just like the NFL. And with a longer break than that, a man who knows more than we do and will be much more refreshed, writer extraordinaire, Mr. Joe Tufaro, who will join us until the final whistle tonight. Good evening, Joe.
How are you tonight?
All right, so guys, we're good. All right, guys, so we're gonna hop a flight to Tampa Bay's third Super Bowl hosting in a moment. Don't talk about what happened in their first hosting. I've tried to block that out 20 years ago, and let's not talk about that. But let's take a little reround and fly to Houston. Almost a year after the trading of star wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, the Texans now deal with another issue, and that is the unhappiness of star quarterback DeShaun Watson. Watson has a ton of qualms about Houston and has reportedly requested a trade. Houston management has said, we are not really going to do that right now, and there's reports on Watson saying, I'm just going to sit out, and now his trade demands have gone to anybody but the Texans, which is, in other terms, everybody. The J-Boys, Jay and Joe. Houston's new GM, Nick Caserio, has said there's no way Watson is getting traded. Explain to us why the Texans might keep him regardless. Jay, we'll start with you.
Yeah, guys, the rabbi called me old school because when we
I changed my mind on that, and we'll talk about that in a second.
when we talked about that other superstar Houston professional athlete who demanded a trade, I said back then the team was not obligated to trade the player because said player was still under contract, to which the rabbi replied, well, that's not how it works now. Well, that may not be how it works in the NBA, but as Joe and I both know, NFL contracts are much different. And while Watson may have a no-trade clause, which allows him to dictate whether or not he will accept any trade the Texans may decide to put together, the Texans are under no obligation to move him, and they do, as Rabbi said, have options available to them that don't involve a trade. As you said, new GM Nick Caserio's first two press conferences had a similar line of questioning. Would he be trading his disgruntled franchise quarterback? His answer was the same, not happening. He reiterated that on a Zoom call with reporters last week to introduce new head coach David Culley, and he was much more forceful. Quote, organizationally, I want to reiterate our commitment to DeShaun Watson. We have zero interest in trading the player. And when he asked if there was a deadline for the team to resolve things with Watson, he replied that Houston is a one-day-at-a-time organization. Culley also said through his own interview process, he was operating on the assumption that Watson was going to be his quarterback. He has 27 years of NFL experience under several highly thought-of head coaches, with Andy Reid in Philly, John Harbaugh in Baltimore, and most recently Sean McDermott in Buffalo. Comes in with a guy with a reputation of being able to unify, motivate, and connect with players. He values trust and consistency, and these are all things he wants to implement and that he's going to need if he's going to help the Texans try and mend their relationship with Watson. His first move was to retain offensive coordinator Tim Kelly, who in his first season as a play caller helped Watson have the best season of his career. There's the consistency part. And honestly, guys, there's no incentive for the Texans to take any other position now. Watson signed a $156 million extension this past September, and he's under team control for the next 5 seasons. So they should exhaust all options and opportunities to try and mend fences. And while Caserio will no doubt continue to toe the one-day-at-a-time company line, his first deadline to decide whether he wants to give in to Watson's request is the NFL draft. Because make no mistake, guys, as we get closer and closer, even likely on draft night, Caserio is going to be fielding calls from other quarterback-needy teams who will throw a bounty of draft capital as well as other players, including potential replacements for Watson, at him to try and pry the Tier 1 quarterback loose from Houston. If he doesn't deal him on draft night, then I think he should call Watson's bluff and see if his quarterback is actually will hold out during training camp. And if said holdout will continue into the regular season, Watson really is willing to give up game checks in protest to still being in a place he seemingly no longer wants to be. Remember, guys, the Texans went 4-12 despite him leading the NFL in passing yards, putting up a 70% completion percentage and 33 touchdowns against only 7 picks. So whether he sits out and the team goes with someone else under center, and I have to believe Caserio has a plan for that, or else he learned nothing in his time in New England, or even if Watson eventually plays at some point during the next season, it's not like the Texans are a playoff contender. So the team can easily wait and trade him as late as next season if it turns out their relationship is egregiously beyond repair. Guys, at the end of the day, the Texans decide they need to move him. They'll get the return they want in terms of draft picks or replacement for Watson and or other players to start their rebuild, and they'll get it either by the draft, the middle of next season, or even after the 4-12 or worse record in 2021. They have no reason to blink right now, and they shouldn't. Granted, if they end up dealing him, it's highly unlikely to get anyone as good as him. But if they plan to go on in a rebuild, I don't think it matters that much. Joe, for me, despite Watson saying he wants out and he has the ability to dictate where he will and will not accept a trade to, the Texans actually hold more cards than people think, and I think they should play out the hand.
I agree with you 100%. I think he's, it was fairly an emotional time right afterwards, and he and Watt walking off the field, and they both said, hey, there's got to be changes made here, and hopefully things get different. I think if you're the GM and you're the owner, you call up DeShaun Watson and you call up this new head coach and you put them in a room together and you say, hey, let's hash this out, and say, look, you said you didn't like how we went about hiring guys. You didn't like, this is what we did. And clear the air completely with them, have him bring in his representative and sit in the room and say, this is what we're planning on doing for you. This is the guys we kept. Here's the guy we just hired. This is direction we want to go. He's worked with some great quarterbacks. He worked with Josh Allen. He worked with Lamar Jackson. He's been around, and he's been in a. Everybody's going, oh, he's never been a head coach, but he's been an assistant head coach in both places. And somebody else wrote, oh, he's never been a coordinator. Well, he's been above a coordinator because that's where they put him. They put him as an assistant head coach for a quarterbacks coach, assistant head coach for a wide receivers coach. So just because he didn't have said title doesn't mean the guy's not qualified. So I think they did a great job in who they hired. I think he's the type of guy, again, who can be a CEO of the club and bring them together. He's not going to be calling plays. He's not going to be just working with the defense. He's a good guy to have at the top. The only way DeShaun has anything here is this year he's only owed $15 million as a base salary. So maybe he could sit out and absorb that and see what happens and see how far the Texans want to go. Next year, his base salary is $40 million, and the next year it's $42 million. So I don't think he's sitting out those unless he's got another business on the side we don't know about. So I think that would be the case where ownership has to take a little bit of leadership here and say, hey, let's go sit in a room together 6 feet apart and introduce you each to each other and walk through this and say, hey, you didn't think we did enough social justice stuff. You don't think we did enough this. We did enough this. Let's talk about it. What do you want? Let him dictate the terms that you don't mind him dictating. Whether or not he's going to be on the team is certainly not a discussion at that point. So you're going to be here unless, again, I know there's a discussion down the road of, does somebody come with a young kid who you think is going to be equal to him? Just because, and this is where I always laugh at the Jet people because it's
you can always laugh at the Jet people. We're a safe
the
space
entire
over
year
here.
he's laughed
you
at.
passed on him in the draft, and you passed on Mahomes in the draft when you had Hackenberg and McCown as your quarterbacks, and now you want to give them the guy you went and got the next year and give them to get the guy back that you passed on. So they're not idiots, and that they're not going to go, oh, look what we have for you. We have the number 3 pick in the draft. Well, that's not how this works, and hopefully those guys are smarter than that down there, and they are. So I think that's where they stand.
Well, to be fair, it's not that you miss him one time and then you never get the chance to pick him up again. That's not exactly how that works. Just ask the Chicago Bears, who are still kicking themselves every single day for not actually picking him.
Anybody 1 through 9 who didn't pick them or now says, look, the Jets have to go after beating the Buffalo Bills. Oh, another quarterback you could have had that you passed on and picked somebody else. So
again, this is not the world of if you pick him, you immediately lose the option. Although I do like that idea. It would make the NFL a lot more fun place. All right, let's talk about a different way of thinking, and that's the way of this actually happening, guys. Let's go to the more logical 2021 thinking. Anthony, the New York Jets. We've talked about them. We haven't laughed at them just yet, but we're about to laugh at them now. What do they need to do to make Watson the QB of the future?
Well, let's be honest. The Jets pretty much have to go all out. And one of the things that the Jets do have is that Jamal Adams trade gives them more than enough draft picks and draft capital to be able to try to get DeShaun Watson and still build around him. Look, they got 13 draft picks overall, 4 in the first round and 9 in the second and third rounds in the next few years. They can easily they have the number 2 pick overall to kind of dangle away like a carrot. Look, DeShaun Watson has kind of hinted and made it known that the Jets may be one of his destinations because he wants out of Houston so badly, liking things on Twitter and we know that's a 2021 way of an athlete throwing subtle hints that he may want to go to the desired destination.
Passive aggressive maneuver.
Yeah,
how'd that work out for him? By the way, not well.
Yeah, but also the Jets also have $70 million in cap space going into next season, so they have the space to take out DeShaun Watson's contract, and they always rework it down the line. The thing is, the Jets is not exactly one of those one-player away teams. They have a lot of holes. Ironically enough, one of the holes is at quarterback because I don't think they're really sold on Sam Darnold right now after 3 years, and it seems like he's gone. It seems like he's progressed backwards. Part of it is the cast of characters around him. He doesn't have much of a cast, but also Sam Darnold's own play has regressed last few years after he had an okay rookie season. With DeShaun Watson, he automatically gives the Jets a star, a franchise player, a star to build around. They have enough draft capital to put pieces around him. And it's not like the Jets defense disappeared. They actually have a pretty solid defense when Greg Williams wasn't putting them in a position to lose games inadvertently. So I think the Jets right now, look, you're not sold on. You got a question mark at quarterback. You're already trying to rebuild from the ground up. You just brought in a head coach that is actually well liked and has a reputation of a player's coach. And you also have an organization that at this point, as bad as you've been in your franchise, you might bring in a star player. You put him in a position where, unlike Houston, he can actually have some say in what's going on. I think at this point, DeShaun Watson, he wants to actually feel like he's a franchise player and a key cog in the operation. And he don't feel like way in Houston, the Jets should go all their way to make him feel like that and try to bring him to New York because they certainly have more than enough to make a trade and to offer the Texans, hey, he doesn't want to be there. We'll give you what you want to be built, even the number 2 pick, because right now, outside of Trevor Lawrence, there isn't a sure thing as far as quarterback, but maybe Houston may go another direction and wait till next year and get another quarterback to replace Deshaun Watson. But if you're the Jets right now, you really should just go all in, see what happens. I mean, look, you can't lose. You got nothing to lose, all right? You're 2-14. You have a quarterback you're not even exactly sold on as your franchise quarterback, and you have a boatload of draft picks thanks to Jamal Adams last offseason, and you have a lot of trade capital to play with. The least you do is, dip your toe in the water and just see how warm it gets before you dive right in. It's the best thing to do if you're the Jets GM right now.
I think the problem is I've heard the word capital way too much with the New York Jets. I think it's almost like a take a shot word right now. You'd be drunk in about 5 seconds. All right. First of all, I want to mention something about that other Houston trade. James Harden literally had said, our team sucks, and I don't think we can win a title. And they still got 4 first-round draft picks and 4 trade swaps. And I think the Texans are wanting to hold out for more. And I think I've actually gone away from my original thinking a week ago, and I think the Texans are going to hold on to Watson as much as they possibly can. I might be wrong. They might flip their minds. But if they do decide to trade him, the natural trade partner would be another team in the AFC East, the Miami Dolphins. 3 reasons. Number 1, the Dolphins have the foundation that no other team does who actually might want him. Maybe the Colts, but I think the might on that might be accentuated. The Dolphins had a 10-6 season last year. They had the 3rd most points in their franchise's history, You have some building blocks in the wide receivers. It's not their strong suit, but they have Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki, who's probably become one of the more reliable tight ends in the National Football League. They went for 700 yards plus each last year receiving. Brian Flores, Anthony's hometown boy, had to mention that. We always have to mention that. He remade this team with a decent running back sight, and with a decent running back signing and one more wide receiver sighting, they're right there. Why wouldn't DeShaun want to go there? Number 2, the Dolphins have draft capital. They have 4 in the first 2 rounds this season, including the Texans' earned pick. They have the Texans pick thanks to the
Laramie Tunsil
trade.
Yeah.
Laramie Tunsil, the number 3 pick this year. And they have 4 picks in the first round. They can give up the first and the second and give up a future pick maybe to satisfy the Texans' pick appetite. The Texans are asking for defensive starters. I don't know how many defensive players the Jets actually have who could be considered worthy to trade, but Miami has one of the best defenses in the NFL. I think they shouldn't give up 2 like the Texans are reporting, but I think that could fulfill both sides of the ball. The Dolphins aren't desperate. They could kind of say, you know what, whatever. We drafted a Heisman winner a year ago. We badly mishandled his first season. I think really badly mishandled his first season. And we think with a full off season where we can actually get him into training camp and he's healthy, we can rebuild him. And I think from what many people have said, the Texans would not want to trade for the quarterback of the team that they're trading for, which is good for that team because they can get something for the quarterback themselves instead of having to give the quarterback and picks, kind of like another team, which we'll talk about a little bit later. The Dolphins, I think, will eventually get DeShaun Watson. Maybe this offseason, maybe next offseason, but it's just a matter of do they get them now or do they get him later? All right, guys, we move on. It's time for our Super Bowl preview. Close your eyes. Let's set the scene. November 29th, 2 days after your boy turns 26. The Chiefs go into Tampa Bay and win 27-24. Win not indicative of the score. Kansas City was leading most of the game. The Bucs are about to go into their bye week in 7-5. And a prognosticator by the name of Tony Romo says, you know, Jim, maybe we'll see these 2 again here in February. I have a good idea. And by God, over 2 months later, of course the Chiefs are back in the big game after an AFC Championship win versus Buffalo. And Tom Brady is in his 10th Super Bowl after winning 7 games in a row after that bye, the last a 31-26 victory over the Packers. Super Bowl 55. Let's look about that. Jay, Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes has lost only 1 game in the last 15 months. How does the offense keep rolling to another Lombardi?
Look, I mean, we know where it starts. Only Houston and Buffalo pass the ball more, especially in early down neutral score situations, than the Chiefs' 63% mark during the regular season. And when KC played Tampa Bay in that Week 12 matchup, that mark went up to 69%. I don't expect that to change Sunday, especially in relation to the Chiefs even attempting traditional running plays against the Bucs' top-ranked run defense, especially in the wake of running backs Darrell Williams carrying 13 times for 52 yards and Clyde Edwards-Helaire managing just 7 yards on 6 carries in the AFC title game against Buffalo. Oh, and in that Week 12 game, Edwards-Helaire ran for 11 carries for 37 yards, and Le'Veon Bell, 5 carries for 22, which means that most of the runs you're going to see from the Chiefs on Sunday are going to come out of RPOs. What most people don't know is that head coach Andy Reid actually calls more runs than you see in the box score at the end of the game. When Mahomes has the option to pull the ball and pass, he'll keep the ball in his throwing hand more often than not, no surprise. Even when the quote-unquote correct read indicates he should give the ball to his running back, he'll still sometimes throw it. His talent allows him to get away with those decisions, which often lead to explosive plays downfield. In that Week 12 matchup, the Chiefs gashed the Bucs defense with RPOs, and even though the Bucs have film on these plays, Reed's had 2 weeks to add some tweaks to free up tight end Travis Kelce and or wide receiver Tyreek Hill, who on his own destroyed the Bucs to the tune of 269 receiving yards, 203 in the first half alone. So I expect the Chiefs to continue running RPOs out of multiple personnel groupings until the Bucs defense shows they can stop them. The other way the Chiefs will attempt to make plays on the ground is by scrambles by Mahomes or by getting the ball to the receivers, primarily McCall Hardman on jet sweeps and end arounds. Hartman broke off a 50-yarder in the AFC title game that way, and we all know Hill is a threat as well on those plays. The Bucs, with their speedy linebackers like Devin White and Devontae David, have defended those plays well, only allowing 64 yards on 21 plays during the regular season. So we'll see how that strength on strength plays out. And even with all this talk about the running game, we know the Chiefs will ride or die on the arm of Mahomes. His performance in the AFC title game was classic Mahomes. His ball placement and accuracy were as good as it gets. He escaped the rush. He made second reaction plays all day. He recognized pre-snap the different pressure looks the Bills brought, and he got the ball out on time to avoid them. He beat the Bills using the triple threat skill set of arm, legs, and brains that most quarterbacks don't have, at least not at his level. When Mahomes is playing like that with the playmakers he has, there's not a lot defenses can do. The AFC title game win over, was the Chiefs' most efficient offensive performance of the season. Their top three offensive performances of the last 2 seasons have all come in the playoffs, proof that they can take their game to another level when the stakes are at the highest. Here's a stat to keep in mind, guys. Mahomes led the league in quarterback rating against the blitz, 96.8. That's probably part of the reason he was blitzed on just 21% of his dropbacks in the regular season. That's the third lowest rate in the NFL. That's a problem for the Bucs because bringing extra pass rushers is a key part of their defensive scheme. They do it on 38% of dropbacks. That's fifth most in the NFL, which means they either have to change up what they do best or play into one of Mahomes' strengths. Whichever way they elect to go, they have to account for my players to watch. And yes, it's a twofer on the Chiefs aside from Mahomes. And that's the 2 guys I mentioned earlier, wide receiver Tyreek Hill and tight end Travis Kelce. In that Week 12 game, Mahomes went 21 for 23 for 351 yards, targeting his 2 favorite guys. Now, Hill was responsible for the bulk of that. He had 13 catches on 59 targets, still go with those 269 yards, and he had 3 touchdowns. Kelce, 8 catches on 8 targets for 82, which was actually an off day for a guy who put up one of the greatest statistical seasons of all time by a tight end, becoming the first to ever top 1,400 yards and the first to average at least 90 yards a game. The AFC title game had both of these guys showcasing their A game. Hill, 172 yards on 11 targets with 9 catches. Kelce, 13 catches on 15 targets, 118 yards, 2 touchdowns. They will be the second tight end wide receiver combo with at least 1,200 receiving yards each to play in a Super Bowl. They are the first teammates in NFL history to record 100 receiving yards in consecutive playoff games in a single postseason. They have accounted for 79% of the Chiefs' receiving yards and 68% of the receptions. Both are second highest for a Super Bowl tandem, and 63% of the targets, which is the most by a Super Bowl tandem. In that Week 12 matchup, they did most of their damage in the first half, when Tampa Bay played more man than zone. Mahomes went 6 for 9 for 113 yards and 2 TDs when the Bucs were in man coverage. The Bucs changed to more zone with their 2 deep coverages that defensive coordinator Todd Bowles prefers in the second half, and that kept those 2 guys relatively in check. Hill had just 66 yards and his 3rd touchdown in the final 3 quarters. Kelce had just 5 yards receiving in the second half after Tampa Bay made their adjustments, and the Chiefs didn't score for the rest of the game. I expect to see plenty of those 2 deep coverages in the Super Bowl, and if and when Bowles elects to play any form of press coverage, he'll probably mix it in with some cover 7, which is a 2 deep man match coverage that can allow them to bracket Hill and Kelce. But as we know, Patrick Mahomes can destroy any coverage, especially when he's playing at the level we're seeing during these playoffs. Chiefs' other playmakers will definitely need to step up to make it more difficult for the Bucs to focus on Hill and Kelce. So the likely return of wide receiver Sammy Watkins will be important to that end. But knowing Andy Reid with 2 weeks to prepare, he'll find ways to get his 2 best playmakers in position to hook up with Mahomes and make the type of big plays that lead to or result in touchdowns.
I love Travis Kelce as a weapon. I think he's the offensive player of the year, and I think he's getting better with age, and he's almost unguardable.
He's a matchup nightmare. I don't see any defense that can stop him.
I mean, yeah, I think you just have to contain them, which we'll get to in a second with the Bucs. All right, Joseph, the defense does not get enough credit in Kansas City, but a guy that you and I know very well, defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo, always a good defensive coordinator, never a good head coach, is proving why his defensive skills are championship worthy. What's their plan?
Well, I think, and this is where the first history lesson comes in, because I always look back at when Belichick,
my glasses here.
When the Belichick was the DC and he had to go up against the Buffalo Bills, when he was the head coach in New England and he had to go up against the Rams, they were supposed to lose by 17 points. They were going to get blown out. And, of course, we know that they kept it close enough that Tom Brady could make his first Super Bowl win against the Rams because Belichick had already played that game. So here comes Spagnuolo, who's already beaten Brady in a Super Bowl, who's now seen him during the regular season. And I know that the NFL these days is all about quarterbacks. It's all about offense. I don't think defense ever gets enough credit in any game.
No.
Especially, announcers, when it's 0-0 at the end of the first quarter, they apologize to the fans. This isn't what we thought we'd see. We're sorry. Hopefully they wake up, and they never give any credit to the defense. So I think the way Spags plays defense is, and again, he knows Tom Brady. He knows he has to change it up constantly. He knows he's got to show pressure and bring it from the other side. He has to have certain matchups. I think he has athletes on that side of the field that can do that. And that's always been the difference in some of the defenses that he's had. He's got a Tyrann Mathieu who he can blitz from different spots. He has Clark. He has all these other weapons on that side that, again, he knows how to deploy them in a way to take away what you're looking for. And basically what they've always said about defenses is you need to take the first obvious read away, make the guy hesitate, make the guy pull the ball down, and then, of course, Brady is a statue. So that's where they're going to try to play that, is take away those first couple of reads, take away that obvious move. And basically, if you look back, yeah, they've won the games. The offense for Tampa did not play well against Washington. They did not play well against Green Bay. If the Green Bay defense doesn't make two mistakes at the end of the half, Tampa probably loses that game. They had the interception that was dropped, and then LaFleur said they made the wrong call, completely miscommunication on the throw to Scotty Miller, that wasn't what they were supposed to call. He said it, hey, it comes down to me. Pettin's not there anymore, so I'm guessing maybe it really didn't come down to him, but he said, hey, it comes back on me.
Oh, it came down on him, really. Yeah. It didn't come down to him.
Yeah. So he said, that was a miscommunication in there. But again, if you make two of those plays, they probably don't survive that game. It was only a 5-point game, and the Green Bay offense was probably the bigger culprit in that game, not the defense. So, Brady threw 3 interceptions in that game. And even though Michael Irvin says, they were down the field, they don't count. Well, they do count because they're possessions. And if you're going to give Patrick Mahomes 3 extra possessions, you're going to lose a game. So I think the defense is going to play very well. I don't think there's a big threat there. You can easily double cover Mike Evans. Count on Godwin to drop a few. Gronkowski's a shell of what he used to be. He's just there, just like he was in 2011. He was just kind of a decoy out there. And, they can stop the run, this team. So I think Kansas City defense will play very well. Will put on a good showing. I don't think it's going to be an over 60 over-under in this game. Everybody's thinking, again, offense, but the defense gets to play. And I think it's an insult to Tampa's defense to even give Tom Brady this much credit for getting them there, because this defense carries them a lot. And that's the reason he chose there, or should have been one of the reasons he chose to go there, was not because the offensive weapons, because there aren't that many. It's more that they had a ready-made defense that could stand up there and make plays for them.
Well, anybody can throw for 4,600 yards in a season, Joe. That's kind of the thing these days in the NFL. Also,
it's who you play, when you play, and we've always talked about this. The amount of the intensity of playoffs and Super Bowl is completely different than when you're playing some team on a Saturday afternoon or a Tuesday night this year, or a Thursday or a Sunday, that you can throw for whatever you want, and guys are starting to learn who you are, and not everybody's as talented. These guys are the top 2 talented teams, and I just think that both teams are very good.
One more thing. First of all, Gronk went 5 for 106 in that first game for a touchdown against Kansas City. Yeah. And when Brady and Gronk get together, it makes Brady seem more comfortable. Also, we now know the one person that found Super Bowl 53 exciting at that 13-3 game, because apparently it was killed by everybody else, but Joe just loved it. Even killed by the announcers, which is just annoying. All right, let's move on to the other side of the ball. Anthony, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are about to be the first ever team to play a Super Bowl at home, and they will be the home team on Sunday, just to make sure that there's a bit of consistency. It was the NFC's turn anyway. So, what does Tom Brady got to do to win one for the – is it the index finger that goes after the thumb, or do you just get to pick it at whatever part the ring goes on? Anthony?
Yeah, you know what? For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you got to stay aggressive, and that's really just keep the aggression going and attack downfield. Look, Kansas City has a middle of the pack defense. It was 16th ranked overall, and I was talking about the Super Bowl where Steve Spagnuolo and that Giants defense beat up on Tom Brady. The difference between that Steve Spagnuolo defense and this one with Kansas City is the lack of a pass rush, which explains why Kansas City has had us blitz so much, and they send mass blitzes about 17% of the time, which is tops in the league. And when you have to blitz so much, obviously there's going to be a lot of one-on-one matchups on the outside. Tom Brady in the NFC Championship game threw the ball downfield nine times, 20 plus more yards. Obviously, we know the big plays from Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, of course, the 39-yard touchdown to Scotty Miller over the top at the end of the first half that really kind of broke the game temporarily open for Tampa Bay. What Tampa Bay has been able to do in the last few weeks, obviously, is that they've just been able to be more aggressive and go downfield. They're going to get Antonio Brown back, which is another key cog and a key weapon they can use to get downfield and one-on-ones. Chris Godwin and Scotty Miller are the two guys I'm kind of keeping my eye on because Scott Miller is really to what Tyreek Hill is to Kansas City Chiefs, and the fact that his speed really gives him an over-the-top weapon, and obviously the Chiefs have to honor that by keeping the safety deep. Godwin had over 100 yards in the NFC Championship game and a big play downfield, but also in the slot because Kansas City is being overly aggressive. That slot receiver is going to be in the spot. It's going to be very key. I do expect Gronk to be utilized a little more, maybe not the Gronkowski of old in New England, but I do see Gronk being utilized downfield, if anything, to keep the defense honest. I do expect the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to run the ball, especially in between the tackles, which is where Kansas City is very much more vulnerable. I think they were 23rd in the league and rushing yards per attempt, particularly up the middle. And that sets up a play action for Tom Brady, which he pretty much excels in without question. Kansas City blitzed so much because they just don't have much of a pass rush. And the Buccaneers' offensive line is playing lights out in these playoffs so far. And for much of the game, Green Bay could not even get to Tom Brady, let alone be able to pressure him. And that is key because if you're blitzing, it doesn't matter what's going on with these society blitzes. If you're not hitting home with a quarterback, particularly of Tom Brady's caliber, he is going to pick you apart. And that's the one thing Tampa Bay has to do. Just stay aggressive. Look, Tom Brady threw for 280 yards. It could have been well over 300 yards in the championship game had it not been for several drops, had it not been for an interception off of Mike Evans' hands that, look, I say he should have caught. I'm going to say, look, I just say wide receiver. If it touched your hands, you got to catch it. And he dropped a couple of key passes. Tom Brady at the and Bruce Arians Bruce Arians is an aggressive play call. He went for it on fourth down early in that game. I expect him to keep his foot on the pedal. I expect him to use Kansas City overly aggressive defensive mentality against them. And they're going to need to put up the points, and they're going to have to keep the ball because we know Kansas City can score at will. But the difference between Kansas City and Tampa Bay is the fact that Kansas City is playing up against a team that can get pressure without blitzing. Kansas City does not have that luxury. And I saw like Chris Jones, they don't have a legit pass rusher on the outside. And that is a big advantage to Tom Brady, who was generally a stationary quarterback. He can't move. But if you don't give him enough time in the pocket, he's gonna throw for 400 yards in a game in a heartbeat. So I expect Tampa Bay to continue to take shots downfield. They're going to use throw a few balls downfield to Antonio Brown, who can still win a one-on-one on the outside, or you can move him around because he's such an X factor, and he'll be 100% healthy. And use Scott Miller the way Tyreek Hill is used in Kansas City to at least get those safeties honest, and then that kind of opens up some of the middle, short to intermediate routes. Godwin and Mike Evans could really go to work in those one-on-one matchups.
I want to ask you guys a question before we move on to the defensive side of the ball. But we know no one cares about defenses. I'll make it short. When me and Jay were kind of arguing about this a couple of weeks ago during the NFC Championship game, I thought Brady threw a lot of 50-50 balls in that game. That was almost like, here, I'm going to throw it up and you're going to catch it. And if you're not going to catch it, you're not going to catch it, and it's going to be an interception. Does anyone think that Brady almost is saying, I don't know, screw it, and throws the ball because he is Tom Brady and does it? Jay, make your case against that.
Okay. Well, I mean, what you felt that first interception.
I was thinking more of the first half when a lot of the balls that he was
and there
throwing
was
were making it.
And to give you guys some context, what we were arguing over is the one where Evans it was picked off where Evans went up for it, and Rabbi felt like, well, he doesn't care. He figures if this gets picked off, it's just a.
It's not just that though. Let me give you the real context of it. I just thought in that first half, the balls you were throwing was more of, hey, I have the time. Let me see if my receivers can beat their quarterbacks. And I don't think that's always a good game plan, especially when you go into a Super Bowl. It's almost like pray.
Here's the way. And what I said to him is that there are certain throws that a quarterback will attempt to a certain wide receiver. And I, as a quarterback, understand this. And Anthony, as a receiver, you understand this as well. Where if you feel your receiver has a good matchup with the guy who's covering him, and he's well known, and a part of his skill set is an ability to make what we call combat catches, you feel more confident throwing what you call, Rabbi, 50-50 balls, because you believe that if it's put in the right spot, your guy is going to out battle, or to use the basketball term, box out his defender and go up and bring that down. And sometimes you do it against a specific coverage in a specific situation, A, because you think he'll make the catch because you have that confidence, and B, to see what you may be able to take away from that entire scenario the next time a similar situation comes up. So the interception that Brady threw off his back foot that just, to me was like the most egregiously his worst thrown ball of the night.
The third one, if I'm not mistaken,
the third one, not the one that went through Evans'
Mike
hands.
Evans' hands was all on Mike Evans. 100%.
The third one where he's just, doing what I would constantly drill Eli over during his career, which is a back foot heave, practically not looking, figuring out, I'm going to throw it because I don't want to take the sack and hopefully my guy will come down with it. But that first one, I felt that was Brady was not necessarily just saying, what the hell? He had a plan when he threw it up there. He believed this guy could catch it, but he also was filing the information away for further in the game.
And I'll chime in too, as the receiver. Normally when you have those one-on-one matchups and you go into the game plan, you are expected to win those. So Mike Evans is an all-pro. I mean, let's be honest. You feel comfortable throwing a 50-50 to Mike Evans because he's made the Pro Bowl. He's made a career off of it. Unfortunately, in that title game, he decided to get a case of the drops at a bad time. And like I said, the one interception that Brady did throw off his back foot was probably the worst throw because that was like Jay said, an Eli-like back off your back foot. The ball's gonna sail over everyone except the free safety who's playing center field. It was one of those plays. But look, Tom Brady's been in the league forever. And so it's not like he was fooled. He's seen every other defense in the book. The thing is, because Mike Evans and Tom Brady are still pretty much a sense, they played all season together, but they're not familiar with each other as Brady and Gronk, where he knows what Gronk is going to be on the field at all times. Mike Evans sometimes do tend to overrun his routes. He does tend to short off, to get alligator hands when he runs across the middle. Those are one of his bad tendencies. And in the case of the NFC Championship game, he will put balls on the field. He will drop a few. But as Tom Brady, look, that was part of the aggressive game plan with Tampa Bay. They are going to take shots downfield. The previous week, Tom Brady was more of a game manager and didn't put the ball in any precarious risk against New Orleans, knowing his defense is playing solid enough to win the game. Whereas on the flip side, they felt more comfortable against the Packers secondary to get those one-on-ones downfield. Unfortunately, on a couple of those passes, it didn't quite work out. But you saw in the first half, they were going downfield. They're like, screw it, we're gonna take our shots. whether it's incomplete or not, we're going to keep attacking. And sometimes you have to do that against a defense. I mean, you're not going to be able to dink and dunk your way every week the way Tampa Bay was able to kind of do it against New Orleans. It was going to get away with it against Green Bay, knowing that offense could put points up.
Yeah, and Joe, I will bet that Brady went to the sideline after that possession, pulled up the film to look and see what else was going on in terms of how the coverage was laying out to see if he can take advantage of it when Evans runs that same route later in the game. What else may be a better shot for him to take?
Sure, and that's why we say about defensive coordinators that you can't show them the same look because he's already seen it and he's already digested it, and he looks out there. Rodgers does it fantastically. Brady does it fantastically. Mahomes does it. They just look out there and they already know what's going to happen, and that's where they get beat. But like I said, the only thing I believe in is if it plays out the same way and you continue to take those shots, Anthony, which I agree with you, but if he throws 4 interceptions in this game and you give 4 extra possessions to Kansas City, that might be 28 points.
Yep.
And that's those aren't going to be – they're not – I don't think they're going to be able to stop the Chiefs like they were able to stop the Packers or limit the Packers to field goals and choices of are we punting, are we kicking, are we going for it. I just think with Kansas City's offense, if they get on a roll and they get moving, you can't give them 4 extra possessions than they normally would have had.
Yep. Packers still won up 26 in that game, by the way. Yeah. And if they actually had balls, it would have been a 31-31 game. Yeah. So, I mean, what's defense apparently? But I am going to talk about defense right now and talk about the Tampa Bay's defensive strategy. Contrary to Jay, you don't teach an old dog new tricks. So I think they're going to rush, and rush the passer some more. With lineman Mitchell Schwartz, who was already out for the Week 12 matchup anyway, Eric Fisher now being out, and maybe, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen, center Daniel Kilgore, this Bucs team has some blood in the water potential. The more they rush and the more they get to Mahomes on Sunday, you can actually make them start dinking and dunking the ball. If you take away the long ball, you take away some of the plays that they had in that AFC Championship game, the ball to Tyreek Hill, the 75-yard reverse to, oh my God, I forgot his name already. The one that fumbled the ball earlier.
50 yards.
Hardman. Yeah, it was, no, I think it was more like, I think you're talking about the reverse, but that was another play that could have easily been taken care of if they actually had a little more pressure. Simple. You need the Chiefs to dink and dunk the ball. You want them to get out of their rhythm a little bit and make them make a mistake or two. And instead of getting a 7 on a drive, they get a 3 on a drive. And now you're actually trying. You can actually have a chance to match up. They don't punt. I don't even think they know who the punter's name is. I forgot who the punter's name is in this game. So how do they do that? They're going to take advantage of Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul's matchup. The Bucs line really has a lot of talent and much more healthy players on their line. And you want the Chiefs to have 8 to 9 minute drives to score their touchdowns, not 5. That's a big advantage. And if that happens, because I know the Chiefs don't really have a rushing game really to speak of. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still healing.
Not a traditional one.
Not a traditional one either. And the ghost of Le'Veon Bell is really backing up on this team. So that could be a little bit of an advantage for the Bucs defensive line. I think they need to get to Mahomes. Now, on to the eight-fingered wonder JPP himself. The man who was putting a ton of pressure on Tom Brady 9 years ago is now the man that will hopefully get Tom Brady another ring on Sunday. Signed for 2 years for what many people were saying. Why? Comes in an amazing playoffs. He had 9.5 sacks his first 12 games of the season, but then he had 2 against Aaron Rodgers 2 weeks ago. He usually will be on the field about 85 to 88% of the time. So he's basically going to need to be accounted for at all times. He might be doubled, but then you have to give somebody else the advantage. If you take away him, you still have Shaq Barrett. You still have a lot of players that you need to account for on that Bucs defense. And I think if the case comes to it, you're going to give the old man, makes me feel young, the chance to at least go on one-on-one. Although he said to backup lineman Mike Remmers that he had no idea who he was, he went up against him in Week 12. He's the backup for Mitchell Schwartz. JPP is a threat down here. Guys, you down with JPP? I know. That's terrible. That's terrible.
Really? Right. You've been holding that one all week?
I haven't been holding that one all week. I just put a final line out there, and I'm like, let's do something from 1993. All right, guys, let's take some predictions. Brady or Mahomes? someone's going to go 3-2 in this rivalry. And more importantly, do the Chiefs become the first back-to-back Super Bowl champs in 16 years? Or does Tom Brady win his fourth Lombardi in 7 years? That man loves odd-numbered Super Bowls like crazy. 39, 49, 51, 53, and now possibly 55. Jay, game, winner, score, MVP.
I tell you, I think this game could very well come down to who has the ball last with 2 minutes or less left on the clock and needing a score, a touchdown or a field goal to win the game. If it's Kansas City in that position, I like Patrick Mahomes' chances, especially with Travis Kelce, a matchup nightmare for any defense, including Tampa Bay's, and especially in the red zone. We talked about this during the playoffs. I picked the Chiefs to come out of the AFC for the second straight year. I believe they have the NFL's best and most dynamic offense, led by the best quarterback and offensive coach in the game, along with a defense that has playmakers who have stepped up in big games. I think that'll be enough to win back-to-back Super Bowls, even with the GOAT on the other sideline. Chiefs, 31-28, Travis Kelce as game MVP.
Anthony?
Wow, you know what? I've been going back and forth because, like I said, this is one of those Super Bowls that you don't even feel bad if you get the prediction wrong because they're two really good teams. One thing I forgot to note was Tampa Bay getting 160 yards on vertical routes in that NFC Championship game, which is why I think Tampa Bay is going to keep their aggression going. You know what? I'm going to go 28-24 Tampa Bay. And I think Tom Brady is gonna be the MVP again. I think it's gonna come out to a final possession in the fourth quarter. Because I just got like this. I know Joe, kind of harped on us about the defense, but it comes out to the quarterback matchups at the end of the day and who's gonna get the ball last. And I feel like Tampa Bay's defense does have enough to disrupt Patrick Mahomes and that offense. We tend to forget that offense is a timing-based offense, and a good pass rush kind of disrupts everything. And Tom Brady should know because his teammate DPP was part of the reason why he lost another Super Bowl to the Giants several years ago. So I think that the familiarity is there. But I'm going to go with Tampa Bay 28-24. Tom Brady Super Bowl MVP yet again.
God help me, Joe.
So, in the famous words of Tom Brady, we're only going to score 17 points. No, Tom, you're only going to score 14 points. So, I'm not harping on anybody about defense. It's just that they do exist, and it would be nice to see get some recognition for some of these players. Because I agree with you, Anthony. I think Tampa's defensive front. I think their front 6 out of 7 is all pro. I think they're the tops in the game. I think that they play very, very well. And I wish somebody would give them a little bit more credit for being out there and being the reason this team is as good as it has been. And I don't think it necessarily reflects on the score because I think there's going to be some crazy things that go on, usually do in Super Bowls. By the third quarter, things start to change a little bit. They start to open up a little bit more. Hopefully there'll be no strange officials calls rather we can get through the game. I'm picking Kansas City. I'm picking only because nobody ever gets this MVP anymore except the quarterback, especially with Tony Romo and Jim Nantz doing the game. Will be the second coming. So it'll be Mahomes. And it's either going to be 28-24 or 38-34, but it's going to be a 4-point spread. And that's the only way you're going to stop Tom Brady from coming back on you and getting that cheap field goal to go to overtime. It's going to be the 4-point spread. So, again, are we only going to score 17 points? Yeah, well, you're going to find out, and you're going to see how good you are because defenses play very well in these big games.
God, I love it. Thank you for reminding me of that quote.
Okay.
That is one of the best,
my favorite line of all time.
Quotes I've ever heard. It's like the reverse Joe Namath in that Tom Brady guarantee. Okay.
The greatest offensive team of all times.
We're only going to score 17 points?
Yeah.
Almost laughing that off. But unfortunately, this is the new NFL, and I doubt the Bills were 1 extra point away from the Chiefs doing 4 consecutive double-digit comebacks in the playoffs. I think Well, 4 out of 5. I forgot about the Reds game. I think the Chiefs have just way too many weapons. I think the Bucks are going to be a little. So it's kind of funny. I think Tom Brady has a lot of experience, but then I don't remember one of his guys was like, one of his teammates was weeping after a Super Bowl victory, and Tom Brady basically smacks him. It's like, come on, we have one more game to go. This is like an old hat for Tom Brady, but unfortunately for the rest of the team, there's still a little bit of a work in progress. I do think playing in their home stadium, it's not necessarily going to be a home game for them. I think with the 22,000 fans and the atmosphere this year, I think that's going to change things a little bit. Again, I think the Chiefs are way too talented on offense. If you find one way to stop them, they're just going to continue doing it. And Brady has to play a mistake-free game. And Brady, even in Super Bowls where he's won, I kind of look at the Super Bowl 52. If he even makes one mistake, if he lets somebody get to him and he loses the ball and fumbles, the game is over because the Chiefs will automatically score on that. They're not the Packers. The Packers left so many points on the board, especially in that second half. I'm actually going to go with the double-digit score here. 35-24. Chiefs win their second straight Super Bowl. And yes, Joe's correct. Why are we even thinking about anybody but quarterbacks as MVP? Jim, I think Patrick Mahomes is the second coming, and I think Patrick Mahomes is going to be the greatest quarterback of all time. He only needs 4 more Super Bowls to win, so I think Patrick Mahomes will be the MVP. I think only.
And then Romo will try to figure out a way to trade him to Dallas.
Jim, I know I can still go. All right, let's move on to the Hall of Fame. So, unlike Major League Baseball, we have to have a Hall of Fame class for 2021. They have to vote in 5 new members this year. It's a requirement. And if you don't get in, I mean, T.O. did it a few years ago, but if you don't get into the Hall of Fame, they don't bitch on Twitter. Or they don't say, take me off of the ballot. Like certain people that we know that we're not really going to talk about.
Virtually.
Gentlemen, let's talk about people who might, or in the case of most of our choices, will be getting the call into the Hall this upcoming Saturday. Jay, you go first.
The guy I'm making the case for is Peyton Manning. And
case is done. I'm sorry, you just mentioned Peyton Manning.
Rabbi let me have it one quarterback to another. I appreciate that. And I can pretty much make.
Oh my God! Hold on. From one couch potato, that's actually coming to another over here. I'm glad I can give you your quarterback.
I appreciate that.
From one host to other panelists.
I can pretty much make the case for Manning's selection this year with one word: duh. I mean, after all, the discussion among the voters a few weeks ago lasted all of 13 seconds. During his heyday with his rivalry with Tom Brady was that generation's Marino versus Montana. No other quarterback this side of Brady was as prolific as Manning in terms of putting up numbers and leading his team to wins. Manning is 3rd all-time in touchdown passes with 539. 3rd all-time in passing yards, 71,940. 1st all-time in fourth quarter comebacks with 43. 5 MVP awards, 14 Pro Bowls, 7 times first team All-Pro. In the Colts' 14 years in Indianapolis before Manning arrived, the team won 1 division title and advanced to the playoffs 3 times. In his 14 seasons as the starting quarterback, the Colts made the postseason 11 times, winning 12 or more games, 7 seasons in a row from 03 to 09, won one Super Bowl and advanced to another. His numbers alone are Hall of Fame worthy, and I could talk about them all day, but there's more to Peyton Manning's career than his place in the NFL's record book, so much more. He won 1 Super Bowl at his best and another at his worst. But his competitive streak was the same from his first game to his last, as was his attention to every detail and his maniacal approach to the game. And those were as Hall of Fame worthy as his numbers. Every snap at every practice, every film session, every lift in the weight room, every throw, every drill. His longtime center, Jeff Saturday, said that Manning was the rare player who loved the process as much as he loved the games. Manning had an apartment in Indianapolis. This was before he got married, but it was barely furnished because he was barely there. His real address was 7001 West 56th Street. And for the uninitiated, that's the Colts facility, which is where it all started from his first day as a rookie. Going to that facility on his days off, throwing hundreds of passes to an equipment manager, trying to perfect the out route down the left sideline. Falling asleep with the remote in his hand watching film late into the night. This is a guy who treated a bye week practice like it was the one for the Super Bowl. and called out teammates who didn't do the same. Quote, there were other players who were more talented, Manning said the day he retired in 2016, fighting back tears, but there was no one who could out-prepare me, and because of that, I have no regrets. Colts owner Jim Irsay has a story about Manning. It happened about a month before the 98 NFL draft. The Colts were torn between picking Manning, considered by most NFL personnel people as the safe quarterback pick, and Ryan Leaf, who Sports Illustrated famously called the potential mother load. In a Newsday poll of 20 NFL GMs that spring, 14 said they would take Leaf. The overwhelming consensus was that Manning had the more recognizable name, but Leaf was hands down the preferred quarterback among NFL executives. He had the stronger arm, better mobility, and more promising long-term prospect as a franchise quarterback. At one point during the Colts scouting process, GM Bill Polian decided to pay longtime Niners head coach Bill Walsh $5,000 to watch every throw Manning and Leaf made during their college careers and then report back. But over lunch one afternoon in Miami with Irsay, Manning sat there, smiled, said all the right things, and then in a quiet moment, he looked at the Colts owner and looked him right in the eyes and left him with the 4 words that changed a franchise. Quote, I'll win for you. Now, Irsay went on to say, people say those words a lot. You know, he said, recounting the story recently, and he continued, quote, but if you were there in that moment, you saw those piercing green eyes of his body language. I'm not lying when I say it sent a chill down my spine. It did. I wish every other owner could have a moment like that in their career. There are moments in your life when things happen that stir your spirit and your soul. This was one of them, end quote. He went on to say that he struggled to come up with the proper perspective to fully encapsulate what Manning meant to the Colts and to the city of Indianapolis. Quote, what can you say? Where do you start? You know, that's how big Peyton was. There's just no way that you could ever be appreciative enough for what he's done for our city. Peyton Manning turned a basketball-mad city into a football town. That alone is worthy of a gold jacket and a bust in Canton. But, you know, putting up legendary performances on the field doesn't hurt either. Omaha!
Wow, that was very loud. Quick question for you guys. Since 5 years since, Manning was benched a lot in that Super Bowl 50 season and only got his job back because of the ineffectiveness of the quarterback who he was benched for. And may have actually started the playoffs. Does anybody remember who that backup quarterback was?
Wasn't it Dan Orlovsky?
Nope.
Oh, wait. I know this.
Wait. Hold on. Repeat that. I didn't hear you. What you said?
Who was Peyton Manning's backup in the Super Bowl 50 season?
No, he was a highly touted rookie who ultimately became a bust.
Big time bust. He's not in the NFL anymore.
Yeah, he's not
correct. It's Brock Osweiler. He's not in the NFL anymore, and there was points when, even though it was foolish, that they thought that he was going to be the quarterback for a number 1 seed in the playoffs. That was a weird year with that Broncos team. All right, Anthony, make the case for another surefire Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I'm taking Calvin Johnson, and now here's the thing. Earlier this season, DK Metcalf was getting those Calvin Johnson comparisons, and then we saw the picture of Calvin Johnson lined up against 3-4 defensive backs. Yeah, until he gets to that level of attention from a defensive coordinator, he's got a long way to go. Calvin Johnson was probably one of the most dominant wide receivers in his 9-year career. We forget he retired at the age of 30 after being kind of getting named and dinked up. And you think about another former Detroit Lion who retired early, that's Barry Sanders. And Calvin Johnson, if he gets in, would be the most modern era Detroit Lions since Barry Sanders to get into the Hall of Fame. Well, six-time All-Pro. He got his stats right here. 6-time All-Pro, Pro Bowl selection, 3-time All-Pro actually. 731 catches for 11,619 yards, 83 touchdowns, and he did that in less than a decade. I mean, most guys could go 15 years and can't put up those numbers. You think about the fact that how many quarterbacks he had to play with to put those numbers up. You think about the numbers, the performance and numbers he put up on an 0-16 team in 2008. We forget about it. He was on that team. He had to deal with the John Kittners and all, the seemingly merry-go-round of quarterbacks, and was still putting up 1,000 yards. He's actually the center of the maintaining a possession rule because of a game in Chicago.
That's right.
clearly caught a touchdown pass and was ruled incomplete only because, for whatever reason, the referee ruled it incomplete because he put the ball down after he landed with 2 feet, and it should have been a game winner. Look, Calvin Johnson, the only doubt that may be against him is the fact that with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, there was a log jam with wide receivers.
Yeah.
And there are 2 other guys, and Torrey Hall and Reggie Wayne, that's kind of been on the ballot a couple of years now. And Torrey Hall was a big part of that greatest show on turf offense in St. Louis for the Rams. I actually had his jersey back in high school. He was one of my favorite players at the time. And Reggie Wayne, you talked about Peyton Manning. He was a big part to that Super Bowl 41 run, and he was kind of the yin to Marvin Harrison's yang, and also you can throw in Dallas Clark as well. And you talk about that offense. Like Calvin Johnson was the Detroit Lions passing game, but was saying even when Matthew Stafford came on board later on and kind of stabilized that quarterback position, Calvin Johnson was still going strong. And it let in his retirement and the subsequent rift with that organization kind of kept him away from football since his retirement. He's been kind of on the spotlight, and him being able to get in, I think that would be a great step. Also, bring it back, kind of bringing one of the most dominant wide receivers of his generation back into the spotlight. But maybe it was something to patch things up as far as him and the Detroit Lions organization, as far as the financial compensation that was not agreed upon. And look, I would say, look, Calvin Johnson, did he have the longevity of some of these wide receivers that are in? But look, unless it was Jerry Rice or Randy Moss, you were not getting in on a first name ballot, first name basis. You're not. This don't guarantee for wide receivers getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But Calvin Johnson, I tell you what, for Torrey Hall and Reggie Wayne, as good as they were, Calvin Johnson literally changed a defensive game plan on a given day because he was the only guy you had to worry about. If you ask the Cleveland Browns and Dallas Cowboys, he was the one wide receiver that can get 200 yards and completely take over a game for you. So I would love to see Calvin Johnson get in first ballot. Never mind the longevity, but because he was just that damn good. And like, I love DK Metcalf, but he's got a very high ceiling to reach.
A long way to go.
And when you have
Anthony, I gotta agree with you. It makes me just wonder what could have been if he'd hung around another 2, 3, 4 years, what type of numbers he could have put up with Stafford throwing to him.
And first of all, number one, if you have a rule named for you, you immediately should get into the Hall of Fame. And number two, for him and Barry.
So Brady's going to get in based on the Tuck rule alone?
Well, he's going to get in on many other reasons, but I think if you have a rule named for you, that should automatically get you in. Number two, anybody that gets through a tenure where you were only a Lion not only deserves a Hall of Fame nom, it deserves you a Medal of Honor. Really.
By the way, Calvin Johnson, you mentioned Dan Orlovsky. Calvin Johnson did catch passes from Orlovsky during that 0-16 campaign.
That's when Orlovsky wasn't putting his 2 feet in the end zone, not remembering what a safety was and what a safety was. All right, Joe.
He's never going to let that down.
Joe, let's talk about the better Barber brother.
Yes, and the better longevity. And unfortunately, the dream was always they could have gone in together if Tiki had stuck it out and done what he could have done.
But Tiki Barber so much, so I'm going to be a little biased against anything Tiki.
Again, you never know. It's too bad we didn't get a chance to see it, I guess is the only thing. But Rondé, who struggled in his first year out, who was absolutely awful in his first year, he played in one game the year that he was drafted, and said he struggled so much, and so did his brother, and just decided to stay down in Tampa through the offseason and study and build himself up and get better. And he played in 16 games the next year, and then for the next 14 years never missed a game, and actually never missed a start, which means in those last few years he was out there all the time. So for 14 years he never missed a game. Pretty good for a cornerback to never miss a snap. So he is three-time first team All-Pro, and the stats are unbelievable. And I'm not normally a stats guy, but 47 interceptions, 15 forced fumbles, 28 sacks, 88 tackles for loss, and 197 passes defensed. So he could play both ends of it. He would come up and support the run, gave up his body in that end, and then also could play defense. So, won a Super Bowl with that great team down in Tampa with, Warren Sapp and those guys, Monty Kiffin, and was just a rock back there. Him and John Lynch. Again, when you play that many years without missing a start, you are the man back there. You are the guy that everybody's counting on to do your job and to do it right and do it all the time. And again, and to show that he retired at the right time also, that he didn't hang on and play 4 games or play 8 games or not start or come in as a nickel guy because he couldn't do it anymore. When he realized he was done, he was done. And that's the one thing both of those guys have done is, move on when it's time to move on. And he's done very well as broadcaster too. He's absolutely very, very good. He's in the Tampa Bay Ring of Fame, and I don't know if he's going to get in this time. I kind of picked him because I thought it would be nice to show that there are some other guys that aren't big, obvious names out there that people kind of forget about, and to show some of the things that he did. And, 47 interceptions with 200 passes defensed. It's 25%. That's pretty damn good at that point.
Right.
And again, 15 forced fumbles, 28 sacks. I remember he was the first defensive back that had 20 interceptions and 20 quarterback sacks. So again, just showing that his versatility was there. 88 tackles for loss is no joke, even over 14 years. So hopefully he gets in. I'm not sure if it's this time because it is a little bit crowded. I know there's a Charles Woodson out there. There's Manning out there. There's a couple of guys, and they like to do 4 to 5 guys, I know, every year. So he may get pushed out this year, but I think he definitely deserves the nomination and deserves to be in the discussion.
Well, Lynch is going to probably be the real person that would probably knock him out. He's been a finalist since 14, and you had people like Brian Dawkins and Reed, Troy Polamalu, and Steve Atwater really shorten the pool for safeties. But if there's any year that 2 Bucks are going to get into the Hall of Fame, let this be the year, considering the fact that I don't know when you're ever going to see them go back to Raymond James Stadium.
It would be a great story, Rabbi, but I find it hard to believe that Rondé gets in ahead of Charles Woodson. There's always been a pecking order in terms
there is, but I think, like I said,
play the same position, and even though they don't come out and say it, it's kind of obvious that there is a certain order in terms of.
Well, I wouldn't. So to be fair, let me cut you off there for a second. I wouldn't compare those two because, especially how I think Calvin is going to get in before Holt and Bruce. Yeah. I wouldn't compare that because they're kind of on a different level. And while Joe was very noble and took somebody who was a little bit of a harder candidate to talk about for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I will take the easy route and go with the third no-brainer on this list, that being Charles Woodson. He's one of only few players to be an All-Pro in 3 different decades. Charles Woodson is as close to a no-brainer on the defensive side of the ball as we've seen for a while in the Hall of Fame. 9 Pro Bowls, led the NFL in interceptions twice in his 12th and 14th seasons. He almost got better with age. And in that 12th season, he was also Defensive Player of the Year. He was a Super Bowl champion a decade ago with the Packers, and he redefined the cornerback position with almost $200 million in contracts. That man got paid. And so my favorite story in researching Charles Woodson and the 4 minutes of research that I did about him, actually was a little bit more, but that Super Bowl 45 run that I just mentioned, they played the Bears at the NFC Championship game. Obama was president at the time, and obviously Barack, big Chicagoan, says the Bears will definitely make the Super Bowl if they play the NFC Championship. Play the Packers. Packers won. Woodson sent a signed jersey to 44 that said, "We'll see you in the White House." I love trash talkers. And Woodson has also become a pretty damn good analyst. I know he was on ESPN for a few years, and you can see him on Fox. He is the bow-tied wonder, and he is my pick for the Hall of Fame, Charles Woodson. All right.
Yeah, you know what? Charles Woodson's definitely a no-brainer. You know what? What made Charles Woodson such a great compelling Hall of Fame candidate is the fact that his career actually seemed to be prolonged because he moved to safety during that Green Bay Packer run, and he was just as effective at that position before going back to playing corner again during the tail end of his career when he went back to playing for the Raiders. So Charles Woodson's versatility, and remember in college he returned catch, so he did that early in his career also.
Little wide receiver too.
Yeah, as a wide receiver, it's the fact that Charles Woodson, his football IQ was top notch, without question. And by the way, yes, he was the guy that hit Tom Brady that led to the tuck rule. For those of you who want to go and do your research, and that the original playoff game in Foxborough, but also besides the point that Woodson played a good part in the Raiders getting to the Super Bowl the following year, also, but they lost to the Tampa Bay Bucks and that Raiders defense. Charles Woodson, without question, I mean, he's really the one Heisman Trophy that you can honestly look back and say he didn't just live up to the expectations. He kind of he exceeded them and then some. And the transition into being an analyst just shown how much of a student of the game he was. Literally going back to his Michigan Wolverine. He was part of the reason why I initially wanted to go to Michigan before I obviously went to Hofstra. But Charles Woodson, I mean, he's a no-brainer. I mean, he's definitely going to get in. It's just a matter of the only question is like these no-brainers like Charles Woodson and Peyton Manning. It's like, do we have to make them wait the time limit before we just let them in? It's like, do we have to just let them go? Let's get the Harvey bus ready when the moment they just hang it up, because you know they're going to be in there at some point. Now with Joe, I would love to see. Yeah, I would love to see. I'm with Joe. I would love to see Vontae Ballmer get in. I watched the NFC Championship game replay. We forgot how good a game he had. 3 pass deflections, a strip
against
sack
the Eagles in 2003.
Yeah, and obviously the interception return for a touchdown. I mean, I want to see all these guys going to get in eventually. It's just a matter of when, not exactly if.
And Rabbi, I'm going to be a homer for just a second here and say, to me, there's another no-brainer, and it's well past time he gets in because he was one of the best at his position for his generation. And yeah, that's Pittsburgh guard Alan Faneca. It's well past time that he gets into camp.
Absolutely. I think this should be a year where they go more towards the max of 8 or 9 modern era players than 5, but we'll see what happens.
Yep.
All right, let's move on. With all apologies to Brandon Staley, the new head coach of the Chargers, and the man that will cap your knees while on the field, Dan Campbell of the Lions. We don't have time for all new coaching hires, and both Saleh we talked about him, or Robert Saleh we talked about last week. So let's talk about the new coaching hires this offseason that may have an impact, positive or negative, by the time that we get to September. Joe, I never heard of Mr. Sirianni until he actually got hired by the Eagles, but what will he do for his new team?
My favorite kind of coach, the ones you don't get talked about for weeks, the ones that are the no-brainers, the ones you have to pick. He's earned it by doing absolutely nothing but calling plays. I like the guy because, again, he's coming at it from a CEO point of view. He's already – the only mistake he's made so far besides opening his mouth is he said he's going to keep calling plays. And I just think that is a mistake that these young coaches need to get away from. He comes in with a good plan. He has this 5-point plan of how to deal with things, and he wants to change the culture there that Doug Peterson made it now possible to say we need to change the culture here, because obviously he was a control freak and he was a little bit of a nut job, and he had some success, and then we don't know which quarterback we want. Let's get rid of Foles. We kept Wentz. Wentz gets hurt all the time. Let's not have another guy. Peterson kind of made it a joke there for a while. So I think they did the right thing of not going after a name, not going after an Urban Meyer type guy. Let's get somebody who's been a coach for a while, but he's a young kid, which is what I like. It's funny, you got an upstate guy coaching the Eagles and a Philadelphia guy coaching the Giants. So it'll be kind of fun to see them go against each other for a while. And again, good young guy, has been brought up right, came up through a lot of systems, has learned his way, has done all the ropes. I do not like the idea of him calling plays, but it's okay with me as a Giants fan. But I think I just think that puts too much pressure on you when you're trying to build that team and build that culture, because if your quarterback comes off the field and you want to go talk to him, you got you're missing half the game. And then if you want to talk to your defense, who's going to go talk to your quarterback because you're doing different things? I don't like that. I like the idea that he can do whatever he has to do on the sideline, do whatever he has to do during practice, during meetings, go wherever he needs to be. I don't like the idea of him being the offensive guy. But, they'll have plenty of assistants, as they said, you have 15, 18 guys now who are assistant coaches. So there's plenty of guys to talk through. But I think this is where this miscommunication comes from. Even with a guy like LaFleur, who's so good and has Aaron Rodgers, there's still a miss somewhere. He missed the defensive call. Who knows? Was he talking about something else? Was he talking to Rodgers? Was he thinking about offensive play calling? And he misses the call that the defensive guy makes. So I don't like that. You guys know I don't like that all along. But I thought they made a nice pick. I thought the kid deserves a chance. And I think that, again, he's been brought up through the process the right way. And it's nice to see some young guys get a chance.
And I think with Shane Steichen, I think that's the way you pronounce his name, the guy who kind of molded Herbert with the Chargers, he might change his mind. I've always been of the mind that Frank Reich was really the guy that won the Eagles that Super Bowl, not Doug Peterson. So bringing more Colts onto this team, and I know they're bringing in Jonathan Glennon as the new defensive coordinator. I think it'll help the Eagles in the long run. Jay, let's talk about the Falcons. Jay, let's talk about the Falcons who hire.
Yeah, Arthur Smith. And it'd be easy to say that the Falcons hired the hot assistant when they made Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator Arthur Smith their new head coach. But I think that would be a disservice to Smith and what he'll be bringing to the Falcons. In his first press conference, Smith plainly said that he wants a collaborative environment. He didn't want to be surrounded by yes men. He actually didn't want everyone in the building on the same page. He wants fresh eyes, fresh ideas. He wants discussion. He wants debate. And he flatly stated he does not want groupthink. And new GM Terry Fontenot is on the same page as Smith. Those two guys actually need to be on the same page. Here's the quote that he threw out there. The worst thing you can do is hire a bunch of yes men on a staff. You want guys with experience. You want young guys. You want creative guys. You want to share the same values, but you've got to challenge each other. The best thing that happens sometimes is there is fair criticism, and you have to constantly evaluate as a head coach, making sure you get the right information, people telling you what's really going on. I've taken leadership lessons from a lot of different businesses. I love reading about history. The consistent message is that it's a long, hard road, and the key is being consistent. To that point, Smith will call the plays for the Falcons, which is no surprise considering the success he had the last 2 years in the Titans offense. But offensive coordinator Dave Ragone, who comes over from Chicago, where he was the quarterback coach for 4 years before becoming the passing game coordinator last year, will have input and bring plenty to the table. It sounds a little Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy-ish to me, and, well, we all know how successful that pairing has been. And because of where he came from, the expectation is that Smith will duplicate his previous success on offense. Think about it. Quarterback Ryan Tannehill has played the best football of his career in Smith's offense, as has running back Derrick Henry, wide receiver Corey Davis, and tight end Jonnu Smith. It's the best offense far and away in Titans history. And while a lot of that has to do with the talent of the players, specifically the guys I just mentioned, but also has to do with the scheme, which has been very creative with wrinkles like direct pitches to tight ends, jump passes by Henry at the goal line. You guys remember that one? And ways to take advantage of Ryan Tannehill's athleticism. Smith always has great game plans, and he adjusts regularly, which is key. Everything looks the same when it comes to the outside zone rushing attack. That's the bread and butter of the offense, along with the deadly play-action passing game. But as we've seen, a lot of unique plays come out of that seemingly familiar, similar look. And although the Falcons don't have a Henry on the roster, Todd Gurley is a totally different type of back. They do have quarterback Matt Ryan and wide receiver Julio Jones. And while those two guys may be starting on the downside of their careers, they do give Smith a couple of good starting points for his scheme, since the chances are good that both will be Falcons next season. Both should thrive in this offense, as should Gurley if he's healthy, though Smith will likely have to tweak the scheme a bit for these players, but that's something he's very used to doing. He understands how to run the ball effectively to give the Falcons a balanced offense and not put all the pressure on Ryan in the passing game, which should help the defense. And speaking of the other side of the ball, I think Smith bringing Dean Pease, who was the Titans defensive coordinator from 18 to 19, bringing him out of retirement to be his defensive coordinator was quite the coup, and I can't think of anyone better to try and improve what was a struggling Falcons defense. Defensive tackle Grady Jarrett, linebackers Deion Jones and Foye Oluokun. I hope I pronounced that right. And
you didn't, but that's okay.
And cornerback A.J. Terrell turned in solid performances last season, and they will be back in 2021. So Pease has some good pieces to start with. Titans players loved playing for Pease because of how he involved them in his game plans and related his vision of the defense to him. He may talk softly, but he walks the walk. He does a great job of developing a relationship with his players while he's developing them. He's an elite level game planner and play caller, especially in the red zone and with getting pressure on the quarterback. Titans put up 39 and 43 sacks in the 2 seasons he ran the defense. They only put up 19 last season with pretty much the same personnel. He made that Titans defense better, and he'll do the same in Atlanta. Look, Arthur Smith has shown he has the demeanor to be a head coach, and he's shown some serious schematic excellence. He's made solid choices, in my mind, for the top 2 lieutenants on his staff, and his talents and skill set match perfectly to what the Falcons need. And everyone in that Titans building will tell you he is ready for this opportunity. He could wind up being to the Falcons what Kevin Stefanski has become for the Browns. Maybe not next season, but the future looks much better than it did under Dan Quinn.
I think the question is where does Matt Ryan fit in all of this? Because he's a lot older. I don't think he fits into an Arthur Smith system all of the time. We'll see. I think he'll be back in 2021, but a lot of people have the Falcons picking a quarterback in the first round. Like to see what might happen if someone like Zach Wilson is in that offense. It
remains to be seen, but I'll tell you what, even if, you got Matt Ryan playing out his last couple of years while you're developing, his replacement, not a bad bridge quarterback to have if you're going that way.
Well, let's see if bridge quarterbacks don't necessarily exist anymore in the NFL, Jay, but we'll see what happens. Anthony, the Texans had a kind of left field hire. We'll get to that in a second when I respond, but let's talk about the Texans.
Yeah, David Culley kind of came out of nowhere and became the newest head coach of the Houston Texans. And by the way, and this is a kind of a note, he's the lone minority hire in this
second minority hire. Salad does
minority is a minority hire.
Robert Saleh, I would say African American. I mean to say the only one. But look, NFL assistant coach, 27 years. He's been 15 in the college ranks. He was the Baltimore Ravens wide receivers coach, which kind of drew a lot of kind of hums and eye rolls when you consider the Ravens offense. If there was any weak spot, was the wide receiver position. And even when they have Hollywood Brown, who I actually do like. But here's the thing. He stepped in a position where already he has to win off the field and actually woo and persuade DeShaun Watson to give it a shot and stay in Houston. I mean, that's kind of like literally stepping into kind of a dumpster fire of a situation. You're already taking over the organization that fired the head coach after an 0-4 start, after so much is going on. You also have the question mark surrounding the other superstar of that team and J.J. Watt, whether or not he comes back, who knows what's going on with that, if he'll be healthy. He's 65 years old. He'll be the oldest head coach to make his NFL debut, passing Bud Wilkinson, who was 62 years and 133 days with the St. Louis Cardinals in 1978 to 79. Yeah.
Why are you putting that on me instead of Joe? Why are you throwing that at me? You know Joe's older than I am.
Because Joe is the guest here.
Rude.
Look, the Texans hired him. Obviously, we know about the McNeils and their history, but the
father's almost as bad, if not worse, than the son. I mean, the son is almost as bad, if not worse, than the father.
Yeah, and they worried about his 40 years of experience and coaching. But I mean, look at it like this. He always has to come in and try to clean up the mess that the front office has created the last few years. It started with trading DeAndre Hopkins. You know what? That's Watson thought about that one, and then everything else and the fact that Watson wasn't even at least he feels consulted as far as who he wanted as a head coach. That already creates a problem that he has to come in as a head coach and clean up for an organization that, let's face it, last year they were in the playoffs. Last season with DeShaun Watson, it looked like they were kind of trending up, and have things changed in 365-day span since they blew that. Remember, they had that big lead in Kansas City. Who knows what happens if the Chiefs don't come back and win that playoff game? Where the Texas organization would be, but here they are. They're pressing the reset button. David Culley, out of kind of out of left field hire, and he's stepping into the Lions den literally before he can have his office set up in the Texans facility. He's got his work cut out. Like I said, the Texans fan base wasn't exactly happy with the hire, but if he can convince DeShaun Watson to give it a shot, let's see where it goes and mend that wound, that relationship wound. And look, this Valentine's Day coming up, I suggest he call Ray Hunter flowers, maybe send some roses over, kind of woo Watson. Look, you can get 15% off. I did it, of course. I can give him a rate.
Promo code OTSL. Promo code OTSL. So it's kind of funny. We basically had at least 6 ideas for dates between David Culley and DeShaun Watson on today's show. By the way, there's the 2 negatives that I have on Culley. First of all, too many injuries last year with the wide receivers for the Ravens. They had the league's worst passing offense, but that has to do more with the personnel, and also with the personnel. Chiefs did not have, when he was the Chiefs in 14, wide receivers did not have 1 touchdown. Obviously, you had Travis Kelce, but then look at the people who he's made have great careers as wide receivers coach. 1997, Yancey Sigpen, Jay, a blast from the past, went for almost 1,400 yards. Todd Pinkston with the Eagles had his best receiving year. Jeremy Maclin when he was an Eagle. He gave DeShaun Watson his first Pro Bowl. Actually, Maclin on 2 teams. Also helped him when he was with the Chiefs. And he gave Tyreek Hill his really first start. So, Culley is an interesting hire. I'm surprised he never actually got a head coaching interview, I believe, until that moment. So, we'll see what happens. I mean, in a year, we're 45 and under, having a 65-year-old as a head coach is a little bit of a different route.
Well, if you think about it, Rabbi, he fits nicely into the guy you never heard of until he got hired, box that Joe likes. So automatically that means he should have a great first year, right? We'll see. But Anthony's right. If he can mend fences with DeShaun Watson, whatever the record is next year, his first year is already a success.
I like to go really with the Vermont teddy bear style of solving problems, but we'll see what happens. All right, so let's bash the Jaguars hire of Urban Meyer. How do I hate Urban Meyer's first foray?
Oh, go ahead and count the ways.
Let me count the ways. Number 1, his continuous flip-flopping as a coach, where he's happy as a studio guy, where he was with Fox, which immediately changed when someone showed him a wad of cash and Trevor Lawrence on the most silver of platters. There we go. I'm back as a head coach. Number 2, the amount of NFL coaching experience that Urban has. 0. Number 3. So I decided to Google the simple phrase Urban Meyer retires, and here's what I got on it. 1, Ohio State retires after only getting to the Rose Bowl, and immediately with the players that he has, Ryan Day gets to back-to-back CFP. 2 out of 3 years, I believe. No, back-to-back. Number 2, Florida. His team does not have an amazing post-Tebow career. Again, he still has all major bowl appearances because he does some great recruiting, but guess what? Can't do that in the NFL. That's called free agency, and a general manager does that. And due to issues with the culture that was being showed in Florida, it took a while for Florida to get back on their feet. Remember, their group has not made a CFP, and 3 other SEC teams has had. Ever think Georgia would pass Florida? That's what Urban Meyer left behind. Oh, and health problems the next time he came up there after his little break. Urban Meyer is a snake. He will be another Steve Spurrier or Nick Saban in the pros. Urban Meyer would only come to the Jacksonville Jaguars if he needed control, just like the 2 people who I just mentioned. You can even throw Chip Kelly in there as an example. He got that control in Jacksonville, but Urban is going to realize you need to take time to rebuild a contender, and I don't think a 56-year-old Urban Meyer is going to stand for that. He needs to jump back into the minor leagues where he has the cachet and he can actually recruit and do what he wants to do. If you think Jacksonville is going to be an 11-5 team next year, and now watch them become an 11-5 team next year because I said it, you're sadly mistaken. And I don't know if Urban Meyer is going to stand for that being the snake that he really is.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Steve Spurrier, Rabbi, because I have a feeling I agree with you that I think Urban Meyer is going to crash and burn in the NFL the way that other former Florida head coach, the old ball coach Spurrier did. It just, certain guys cannot make that transition and either are and some of them are just too egotistical to realize that their best place is being king of a major college football program. Saban recognized it and he went back.
Very
Spurrier
quickly.
recognized it and he went back. I understand that, to some people like Urban Meyer, and maybe it's his ego that won't let him, accept the fact that he won't be able to do what he wants at the NFL level. But I think he's going to find out very soon, and I don't think it's going to be pleasant when he does, that this is not the place for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And interesting hire, to say the least. All right, let's move on. All right, so this last segment is going to be about 4 QBs we're going to move this offseason. But God damn it, the Rams and Lions jumped the damn gun early and exchanged single callers. Matthew Stafford to the Rams and Goff to the Lions. Detroit also gets 2 future first-round picks in 2022 and 23, a third-round pick, and 100 shares of GameStop stock. Congratulations. Let's examine the trade from both sides. Jay, tell us what the Rams get in Stafford, and then Joe will take Goff to the Lions.
Yeah, the headline version to that answer, Rabbi, is the Rams will be getting a veteran quarterback still in his prime who replaces a quarterback that the organization, especially head coach Sean McVay, had quite obviously and quite publicly soured on. 38 turnovers in your last 31 games will do that, as well as giving the Rams offense something it has been missing for the last couple of years, and that's the deep ball. LA is making it very clear that they think they can get back to the Super Bowl with better quarterback play, and I can't fault their reasoning. Their defense finished 4th in efficiency this season, has 2 of the NFL's best players on that side of the ball in cornerback Jalen Ramsey and defensive tackle Aaron Donald. They have plenty of skilled position weapons on offense with running backs Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson, wide receivers Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and Josh Reynolds, and tight end Tyler Higbee. All of these players are under contract for at least the next 2 to 3 years, giving the Rams a very decent win-now window with this roster. So when McVay elected to go with backup John Wolford over Goff in a playoff game because he liked the way Wolford moved the ball, how his processing speed and ability to escape pressure and move when the pocket broke down allowed the Rams to run the longer developing plays that McVay had to remove from a Goff-led offense this year. And Goff only got into the game because Wolford got hurt. Well, if that's not a red flag about how McVay felt about the future of his offense with Goff at the controls, I don't know what is. Now, granted, Stafford had 4 different offensive coordinators during his time in Detroit, but it is fair to say that this past season, executing Darrell Bevell's scheme let Stafford does what he does best. The offense didn't use as much pre-snap motion as the Rams offense does, but it allowed Stafford to work off play action and take shots deep down the field. And I think McVay is positively salivating at having that part of his playbook back, along with being able to scheme to maximize Stafford's skill set as a gunslinger, his ability to freestyle and make plays off schedule. Stafford hasn't lost anything off his fastball, and he's consistently shown that he's one of the best with the game on the line. He'll benefit from all those playmakers I previously mentioned, which will also play into a tendency of his from his time in Detroit, and that's having 1 or 2 guys he feels comfortable going to when a play needs to be made when things break down. Now, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods may not remind Stafford of the future Hall of Famer Calvin Johnson, but they are proven playmakers in McVay's offense. So it'll be interesting to see which of them is the one that Stafford builds a rapport with like he had with Johnson. Stafford's also a gamer. He shows up, he has a terrific work ethic, and he plays hurt, which will endear him to that locker room. With a much stronger defense than he ever had in Detroit, a better offense around him, plus a play caller and game planner of McVay's caliber, which is a level above Bevel's, no disrespect to the Jaguars' new offensive coordinator, Stafford very well could give the Rams another shot at the Lombardi Trophy. Look, you can say that the Rams gave up too much in terms of draft capital to get Stafford. Take a drink, Rabbi, I said capital. But as I said earlier, the Rams believing that they have a win-now roster and that an upgraded quarterback was the missing piece, especially in a division like the NFC West, it was a trade they absolutely had to make, especially with Goff being out of favor, especially with McVay.
Yeah, we talked about this. Yeah, we talked about this throughout the year and you guys know I have a good friend of mine who works the sidelines for the Rams, and it just got worse and worse and worse game after game. You could see, and I've said this a few times on this show and to you privately, Rabbi, saying, look, McVay, who's the hottest young offensive mind, who has all these great ideas and all stuff, and then has somebody who can't do it. And that's what he started to feel like was, hey, you got to give me somebody who can do this. And, in Goff's defense, he came into the league. The team had just moved back to LA. They were going to open a new stadium in a couple of years. They needed to start from scratch, draft a quarterback. They had a top pick. Well, it was between him and Wentz. It wasn't the strongest draft. If you go through the whole draft, it certainly wasn't the strongest quarterback draft, but they decided to start somewhere and to build this team into something, moving into a new stadium, again, having just come back to LA. So in 2016, he has 7 starts. He goes 0-7, right? Not the greatest way to start your career. And then he goes 11-4, 13-3, and then 9-7, 9-6. But if you look through his sack totals, and this is what Jay's always talking about holding the ball too long and not being able to process and not knowing what you're doing, 26, 25, 33, 22, 23. It's like he never learns the other part of the game. He never got better in that system that was built for a certain type of quarterback. If you noticed, even this year, all the motions went away. If you notice this year, they went all the way down to the play clock going to 2 or 3 seconds. So they couldn't even have any motions, couldn't even change plays because he didn't want them to, because he couldn't process quick enough. So what you get in Goff going to Detroit is he's 26 years old. He's under contract for 4 more years. So you have a chance to look at him, and not at huge money, but, normal money.
It's still huge money for Jared Goff, though.
Yeah, no, but they go out and hire Anthony Lynn as the offensive coordinator. They get Aaron Glenn as your defensive coordinator. You get Dave Phipps for special teams. You get Deuce Staley as your running backs coach. You get Mark Brunell as your quarterback coach. You get Hank Fraley as your offensive line coach. Ben Johnson as your tight ends coach. Dan Campbell is going to put together a system. He has fantastic coaches. They're all ex-players. Somebody he can relate to, somebody they can talk things out through, somebody to see what his strengths are. Mark Brunell and him may be the same guy. It's a perfect kind of a match in that sense, and they'll build an offense around what he can do, not here's the greatest offensive mind coming into the game, and by the way, you got to use that quarterback. So let them use who they have. Let them decide how it is. The Rams are definitely, again, you just opened a brand new stadium and you went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago and your quarterback played awful in that game, was terrible in that game, and then continued to be terrible from that point on. And again, the head coach just lost confidence in him completely. And it was a move, as you say, Jay, that had to be made. Yeah. I think they made the best of the moves and to do it quickly. I think both teams were. And again, Detroit wasn't going to go out and get a DeShaun Watson. They weren't going to go out and get, a bigger name guy, or, I know there's a conversation coming about Aaron Rodgers or all this stuff. That wasn't the guy they wanted. They want somebody who they can mold into what they're going to do. He's now excited to go to a place that wants him, that's going to put him on the side of the building, that's going to make a big deal about that he was the number 1 pick, and build around him and be a solid guy for them for a couple of years. And then they have 4 years to figure it out. And they have a lot of draft capital still left, to go out and put some people around them. I haven't talked about cap space this whole thing because we don't know what it's going to be. And it might be, a lot of Jets fans are going, oh, we have a lot of cap space. You go, well, it might be $20 million less than you think it's going to be, because
it's still going to be something where they don't have to be over anything.
Yeah, exactly. So you're still going to be in a spot here, but I think it worked out for both teams. I think it works out perfectly for what they needed.
And I'll tell you this, and everybody talks about, the big deal with the Rams getting Stafford. But here's the thing, about the Lions' end of the deal. They didn't have to give up the number 7 pick in this year's draft. Right. And that is something that I think has gotten, in a lot of conversations, has gotten lost. they got a guy, as Joe said, they can put in an offense that is friendly to his skill set. But they could conceivably this year use that number 7 pick if somebody falls to them on a guy that they might like more a few years down the road. And if not, it gives them, they still have that pick to improve, maybe put another weapon around him, because none of the Lions receivers are signed.
Okay.
So again, the fact that they were able to get a guy that they can mold around in an offense that's friendly to him and keep the number 7 pick, nice job by Detroit. And I don't know if anybody remembers this, but the guy who is now the GM for the Lions was the director, I believe, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, director of scouting or director of pro personnel with the Rams. He's the guy who pushed for Goff to get drafted. So he gets his guy back.
Yeah. And they have, and Chris Spielman's done a really good job up there getting it organized quick and getting some good guys in there as the president of the team. And really, there's going to be a lot of backups around too, Jay. Once all this carousel ends, they were saying, Bridgewater might be available. So they'll be able to bring in another guy to push him a little bit, or at least to help him be in that room, who'll be another veteran.
Josh McCown type or Bobby.
So there'll be a lot of guys around that they can do that with. Maybe bring Sam over, just to have him sit on the bench.
Wait. Is Sam Darnold or Sam Bradford?
Yeah, either one.
Another number
Bradford's
1 pick.
still in the league.
Another number 1 pick.
Rabbi,
another number 1 overall draft pick at quarterback by the Rams, who did not pan out with the Rams.
That's right. In St. Louis.
In the league? Jesus. I remember when the Vikings gave up like 2 first-round picks for him and what was one of the worst trades ever. By the way, I love it now at the NFL that someone who's still getting paid 4 years for $100 million as a mediocre quarterback is considered a friendly contract. So welcome to the NFL 2021. All right. So Anthony, I have a question for you or an answer for you as we talk about quarterbacks who could still get moved. This quarterback just lost his 4th consecutive NFC title game, is going to host Jeopardy for a week, and is reportedly dating Shailene Woodley, and many people still think might move in the offseason. And the answer is?
Is it Aaron Rodgers?
That is correct.
Wow.
Hey, and he answered in the form of a question. Props.
No, he said, is it Aaron Rodgers?
I'm still answering it in the form of a question.
It's
okay. Who is Aaron Rodgers?
There you go. And be semantic about it. There you go.
That's not the semantic about it.
Okay, besides Aaron Rodgers' charm dating life, which I am very envious of at the moment, Aaron Rodgers is pissed. Okay, let's just be honest. Aaron Rodgers has a really passive-aggressive personality. We get that. Very even kill. But he's not happy. I mean, come on. The slap in the face of the Packers trading up in the draft to get Jordan Love. Now, clearly, you're not doing that if you don't think the quarterback you already have is kind of at the end of the road, and you're looking forward to moving on at this point. Aaron Rodgers responded by having one of his best seasons. He's going to be NFL. He's going to be league MVP. I think he's a runaway for MVP. And the thing is with Aaron Rodgers, the fact that the Packers, outside of that Super Bowl 45 run, they have wasted so many of Aaron Rodgers' most productive seasons at quarterback. They've won games in part because Aaron Rodgers literally carried them on offense. You think about this. They haven't had a slot receiver since Jordy Nelson retired. They only have Devontae Adams as an outside receiver and a reliable one that Aaron Rodgers can depend on. You think about how the Packers could have easily just gone in all in, knowing that Aaron Rodgers was getting up there in age, he's still productive. You probably want to give it one more go. How many years? I remember the Packers being 15-1, and the Giants beat them in part because they had the worst defense in the NFL and couldn't stop traffic along 8th Avenue. That's how bad it was. Then there was another year. Colin Kaepernick literally took it to Tecmo Bowl, Bo Jackson, and ran up and down the field on them at one point. Then they had the mishap in Seattle with the botched onside kick with recovery. And just so on and so on. Like, how many opportunities with Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback, did the Packers waste as far as getting another Super Bowl? And you think about this. He's 37 years old. He's still under contract for 2023. The problem is he's not going to be paid like an elite quarterback. He's actually going to be paid the least amount of money among NFL quarterbacks going into that. And after next season, his cap hit lowers, so that makes the Packers more, susceptible to possibly moving him or releasing him entirely. Obviously, the NFL stands for not for long. Yep. This reminds me so much, and I brought this up on our production meeting. This reminds me so much of Brett Favre last few years in Green Bay, where they drafted Aaron Rodgers, and they couldn't wait to get Brett Favre out of there, except he has his best year and takes it to the NFC Championship game, and obviously still wanted to play, and then led to that messy divorce. The Packers are trying to not repeat history, but it's painfully obvious that saying the right things, doing the right things is a little different, and you already have a quarterback who's not happy with the organization, with not giving him, maybe going all in and giving him the weapons that he feels that he needed on offense, maybe get another offensive lineman to protect his blind side where don't have to run so much, maybe get him another receiver, maybe get him an actual stable running game. I can't remember the last time the Packers had a 1,000-yard rusher. It's been that long.
This year, Aaron Jones went for 1,200 yards and was one of the most reliable running backs.
Yeah, but how many years before that? Montgomery was his starting running back.
Just continue.
Yeah, but that's this year. I mean, think about how many years the offense literally was surrounded by Aaron Rodgers. Okay, let's just be honest. Look. And also, by the way, we all about Matt LaFleur taking a ball out of his hands down in the goal line instead of going for a fourth down. So that's another kind of a thing that's kind of hanging out there. It's like you don't trust your quarterback who's won how many games to go for a fourth down? At the very least, try to tie the game. Look, both sides are saying the right things, but look, I dated somebody who was passive aggressive, and when they give you a passive aggressive attitude, take it for what it is, still upset about something. There's a reason why I'm single, because I didn't listen to my own advice, but the Green Bay Packers need to figure it out somehow because come on, you have a quarterback waiting in the range. You didn't just draft him so you can hold a clipboard for 4 or 5 years the way Aaron Rodgers did. They're going to have to figure it out. And Aaron Rodgers, at this point, I think he really wants to control the narrative a little more and maybe dictate the terms. I mean, he wants a new contract. But right now, he kind of has some leverage because of the year he's coming off, but it's going to be interesting off season to see what happens between both sides.
Welcome to the reactionary world, by the way. We talked about this 2 weeks ago. It would have been Aaron Rodgers is an MVP candidate. They've tailored the offense around him. He has the most offensive weapons, and he's about to win 2 Super Bowls.
One
NFC championship. I know people said this before, but hold on.
Summertime, you've been pissed.
Yeah, well, of course, they said it in the summertime because this is before. No. This is what pisses me off. You can't just say that and all of a sudden after the loss is like, oh, yeah, they drafted Jordan Love. He said some cryptic comments after the game that every quarterback would say going into an off season. Of course.
Yeah.
No, he's gone. Of course he's going to go.
But look, Rabbi, to be fair, and I would say this, and I say this, the night we all did the draft show, we were all surprised with the Packers drafting a quarterback. Yeah, but here's the thing. Yeah, but ever since April, the whole idea was, what are the Packers going to do with Aaron Rodgers, who was still on the contract, and you just traded up to draft a quarterback? Are you are you just going to turn the page on a guy who now suddenly goes out and has an MVP season? That puts the Packers in a bit of a...
Let's get into this.
Hold on a second, please. The draft is about value picks, okay? They got Corey Dillon in the 3rd round, who's going to be their star running back coming pretty quick.
AJ Dillon from BC.
AJ Dillon. They got wide receivers in their 6th and 7th round. They moved up because they saw an opportunity to get somebody. It wasn't a great draft. It wasn't like they skipped over somebody to take this quarterback. It wasn't like there was the Heisman Trophy went in from Alabama sitting there and they said, oh, we don't need another wide receiver. It's about value. They moved up and took where they are. They are going to sit him for a while. They may keep him for 2 years and trade him. Look at all the guys who have done that over the years, especially from Green Bay. Didn't they have a guy that they used that went off to Seattle got $50 million that was sitting behind Aaron Rodgers?
Matt
Hasselbeck.
Matt Flynn.
No, Flynn.
No, Matt Cass.
Matt Flynn. Okay.
Cass.
Matt Flynn.
So that does happen, and they do bring in guys that match up well so that they can run the same offensive practices. They have a lot of reasons for doing this stuff. They didn't say, oh, my God, we don't like him anymore, so we're going to move up and get a quarterback. That's all a value play. It's all done by scouts. It's all done by the GM in the front office. It has nothing to do with that. When he left on that Sunday night after losing that game after 2 years in a row, you don't know, and this is what I'm trying to tell everybody, you don't know what conversations he had leading up to that week or even after the game. He's worried about David Bakhtiari. Is he going to be healthy enough to come back? Because obviously the other kid can't play tackle, the one that they moved out there.
Nope.
He doesn't know if Tanyan's coming back. Tanyan's a restricted free agent, but who knows if he's going to come back. What he said was there's a lot of decisions to be made on this team. And because he's not God and he doesn't talk of himself that way, he said, including me, there's a lot of decisions to be made on the team. Who's going to still be here? Every athlete on every professional team except an NBA team says, what is this team going to look like next year? Because a lot of guys leave in free agency. A lot of guys get cut. A lot of guys get hurt, can't come back, retire. I don't know what he talked to. He may have talked to Bakhtiari that weekend, and he said, I'm done. I'm retiring. If we lose this game, I'm not coming back.
Guys,
you don't know what's going through his head is all I'm saying. And I think you put too much on this. Oh, including I may have to make a decision. Well, so let him make a decision. It's not the end of the world.
Hey, look.
If he leaves, it's not the end of the world.
Guys, we've talked about this long enough.
We do have to go on, but I agree with Joe.
Let me get my 2 cents in after here. Let me get my 2 cents in because we have to eventually end this show sometime before midnight. So you know that moment I think Anthony just mentioned where you break up with somebody and then they say, oh, it's not you, it's me. I think Derek Carr and the Raiders need to be on that path. Although passing yards per attempt, QBR, and passer ratings for him was at all-time highs last year, I feel like the Raiders and honestly their fans all think, no, we can do better. And especially John Gruden, who always thinks he can do better and is the quarterback whisperer. Oh, yeah? You think DeShaun Watson's falling into your lap and you could replace a top 5 quarterback and make a top 5 quarterback from a top 10 to 15 quarterback? Not so easy. I think if Carr is put up in free agency, and I think you know how much, or is put up in trade talk, and you know how much Gruden loves his draft picks that he'll eventually screw up on. You have the Falcons, you have the Bears, you have the 49ers, and hell, even the Jets could use him. He's not even 30 yet. The Raiders can also have a mid-round draft QB to fit into their system, someone possibly like Mac Jones. And these teams would love to give up a bounty for a true starting capable quarterback, teams that are on the verge, i.e. not the Jets. Then Carr can go to a place where he doesn't have to look over his shoulder 24/7, and the Raiders can start anew. It's the best for both parties. Again, it's not you, it's truly them. And the fact that you can just see more than 15 quarterbacks change teams this offseason is honestly mind-blowing to me. Yeah. And I think that makes this offseason a very, very interesting one.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Rabbi. And I have never been a fan, as much as, ESPN loved to do that quarterback, camp segment with Gruden during, with the potential draft picks and then during spring training. And, it was interesting to see the way these guys answered his questions and drew up plays on the blackboard, on the whiteboard, and showed him their football IQ. Gruden, as a head coach, as an offensive guy with an actual quarterback that he has to coach and develop, he's not done a great job. Gruden thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. And unfortunately, for the Raiders, the smartest guy in the room actually is Mike Mayock, but Gruden doesn't always listen to him. And I'll tell you what, Carr, like a lot of other quarterbacks, is going to go somewhere and be in a system that is tailored to him, that works for him, and a change of scenery will do him good, and he will actually – his career will go back on an upward trend solely because he's not dealing with John Gruden.
It's funny, though, considering it wasn't really ever on its outward trend to begin with. He's just, again, on the wrong team at the wrong time. Speaking of
in the
time,
wrong system for him.
Yeah. Speaking of time, we got to go. So, gentlemen, let's put in the food orders for our socially distanced Super Bowl parties. And let's have a good Super Bowl, guys. For Jay Kaplan, Anthony
Bring in the nachos.
Okay, if you're bringing in the nachos, that's good. Make sure they're nice and more bountiful than ever. So for Jay Kaplan, Anthony Strait, and
I'll bring
Joe
the Taco Bell.
You always
God.
do.
I regret even mentioning food after on this closing. So again, for Jake Kaplan, Anthony Strait, and Joe Tufaro, this is On the Sports Lines. Joe can be read on many platforms, but most importantly, still last word on sports, Joe?
Yes.
All right. So, plug time. For those who also like video and don't like to just read, like Joe Tafaro's many great columns, On the Sports Lines airs weekly live on Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLines. It also gets put up on demand at YouTube.com/OnTheSportsLines, and you can get that same link that Mr. J will post tomorrow at ONTH Sports Lines. Leave off the last E for savings. Next week, this time, or Thursday, join us again for more talk. We'll start thinking about Mets and Yankees, or maybe we'll even start talking about that St. John's Red Storm team that's all of a sudden getting a little more play, including a win over number 3 Villanova tonight, sir. Nice win there. All right.
Thank you.
We'll recap, and we'll also recap this Super Bowl big game thing that we have today. Enjoy the Super Bowl, guys. Good night.
Take care, everybody. Good
Good night,
night.
everyone.
Right.